Every summer, the British Virgin Islands have their biggest event of the year, spanning 2 weeks. Within those 2 weeks, a familiar conversation arises about how the festival is sliding more and more towards a commercialized event and farther away from what it used to be. The celebration that honors the 1834 Emancipation Proclamation reading that solidified the ending of slavery. Mainly a church-led event focusing more on the island's trades and practices that the slaves used to do. We had storytelling, cultural songs, dances, and craftings. Now the elders argue that most of these practices and activities are lost or just under showcased, as the younger generations aren't made aware of its existence and importance. They are now exposed to the more modernized version of festival, where we no longer teach old traditions but rely on short displays during festival, which come from the older generations as parade, village, and juve take front row of the celebration. Although the conversation takes place every year, it's the constant contradictions that keep it alive, and people are unsure of when it will ever end. Hall can help me argue my point on village using his encode and decoding model. He rejected the original model of communication and created his own that allowed for better flow of communication and lack of misunderstanding. Hall argued that a continuous circuit is sustained through the articulation of linked distinctive moments, production, circulation, distribution, and reproduction. The model highlights that the message must be translated into and out of a message form. Village is a multi-night event with different themed performance nights, with artists from the B.V.I. and across the Caribbean. Coney Island, the amusement park ride for kids, and lastly, the horseshoe ring of bar food stalls that enclose around the space. The government gives us the encoded message that's constructed with their professional ideologies and knowledge. They are the ones that promote this festivity as an event of national unity and a joyful experience. The people of the Virgin Islands, however, may decode this message 3 different ways. There's the dominant hegemonic decoding, which is the response about the message that the government wants us to have. This is where the people in the territory are 100% on board with everything the government plans for the village. They have no qualms about the artists being brought in. They fully accept the ticket prices that are given to them. Most importantly, they understand the circumstances outside the government's control, like underage drinking that happened inside the village, is something that always occurs inside and outside a festival. I'll categorize these people as the freshly young adults of the British Virgin Islands. Then we have the negotiated decoding. This is where they take half of the message that the government gave us. They take the message from the sender, but only a partial acceptance. For example, they accept the artist that the government has chosen to perform, but they reject the ticket prices of the village and the night activities that take place, such as the underage drinking. I'll classify these as the adults of the British Virgin Islands. Next, we have the oppositional decoding. This is where the message from the sender is being rejected in its entirety. They reject the artists that are being brought into the country, the young adults that stay after Coney Island closes, the underage drinking that occurs, and the prices of the tickets that differ every night. They argue that the event as a whole has become distasteful, and I'll classify these people as the elders of the British Virgin Islands. Gramsci will be helping me discuss Juve and Parade. This is where I classify these 2 sites of festival as a site of war position, where ideological struggle and cultural contestation are ongoing. Juve is a pre-dawn street party marking the start of festival. However, the B.V.I. has 2, and they aren't at the start of festival. But this involves paint, water, and powder as the people dance across the street behind trucks till morning. The B.V.I. has 2, as I previously mentioned. We have Eastern Juve and Rural Town Juve, previously known or regularly known as Rise and Shine. Gramsci speaks on ideology and hegemony as it relates to his philosophy of praxis. The ideology surrounding Juve is this idea of liberation and cultural resistance. We celebrate emancipation and the joy as a resistance that sustained enslaved people through oppression. So basically, we see this as a party and celebrating what the slaves couldn't do. The counter ideology of Juve is that it's a large public disorder and a mess of the road. A nuisance that promotes nothing but noise and indecency. The loss of a tradition and just walking up and whining behind the trucks. And taking it as someone who has been woken up by the Juve trucks, it's a lot. But it's also a really good party that everyone celebrates. But there is still some arguments and disagreements about who should be allowed and what we should be going on about the road and clean up after Juve. But that's a story for another time. Next, we have the August Monday Parade, which is celebrated on the first Monday in August and is a massive street party just like Juve. However, it features elaborate masqueraders in costumes, steel pan bands, moko jumbies, and a panel of judges to reward the best of mass. And mass is just a big celebration of party. The hegemony about this is that the government's obsessing over the need to control and commercialize the event for tourism and the island's financial benefit. And there's also the financial gain for the troops, as the costumes, although beautiful, is extremely expensive for such little pieces of fabric. The counter-hegemony behind this is that the parade's histories and practices. It involves cultural reclamation, joyous defiance, and the assertion of our identity. They challenge the dominant narrative, utilizing the event as a place for social community where everyone, women and children included, especially, is invited. The struggle for a counter-hegemony often requires organic intellectuals, which is the emergence from the subordinate classes to articulate their experiences and help them achieve critical consciousness. In the context of festival, musicians, dancers, storytellers, community elders, and cultural organizers act as organic intellectuals. They use cultural forms to articulate the subalternate narratives and alternative Caribbean consciousness that emphasizes social justice and the completion of the process of emancipation. The B.V.I. Festival, or as we call it, Emancipation Festival, best represents Gramsci and Hall's theories in the sense that this conversation has two sides about what the government thinks the territory needs and what the people actually want. I understand everyone's views on how a festival needs to remain rich in culture, but it does need to be modernized to an extent to keep up with the economy, as our biggest financial sector is tourism. However, from my dominant hegemonic decoding standpoint, I embrace festival to its fullest potential. Because at the end of the day, arguments or not, discourse on conversation, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what can we do, what can't we do. At the end of the day, it's a big celebration about culture and unity and an overall vacation paradise.